And by the way, that they communicate instantaneously, faster than the speed of light.
When you say if you observe, do you mean that if you observe it with
anything, doesn't matter.
But you have to do something.
Yeah, you have to do. Yes.
So something has to interact with it. It's not woo.
But it's so not woo.
But you say that, people go, yeah, I saw that in The Secret.
Yeah. So the problem is the word observe. People think is a psychological thing, but in physics, it's got nothing to do.
It's a measurement.
It's a measurement thing.
Right.
And so in other words, if there's an electron sitting in the middle of this table and all the lights are out, I can say, I think there's an electron here. Let me find out. And the moment I turn on the lights, the light interacts, a photon interacts with the electron and kicks it somewhere else. So the more I try to measure its position, the less I know its position. So, because you need to, the measurement requires an interaction with it. And in the quantum scale, interactions change the state of the experiment that you're conducting. We know this, we quantified it, we don't like it, but we deal with it. And in the act of dealing with it, you can exploit that fact for other purposes. We exploit quantum craziness to birth the information technology revolution. There is no creation, storage, or retrieval of information without an exploitation of the quantum. So, and by the way, the quantum was discovered in quantum physics as a branch of physics, was discovered in the 1920s. If you were around back then, and your tax buddies who don't like paying taxes, what would you have said? Why are you spending government money on if you can't even see them? What good is it? All I can where your tax dollar is. And so time and everybody else's money. 4 or 5 decades, before we would realize what role that would play in computing this creation, storage, and retrieval of information. And by some measures, it's 1/3 of the world's GDP is traceable to what quantum physics does for us on a continuum scale. So anyone, yes. Well, I mean, there are ways to do it. There's certain industries that would still be there without computing, but they're made more efficient with it. Okay, so UPS tracks all of their trucks with GPS and with a computing device that invokes the quantum. But UPS predates the use of these tools. But you can look at profits relative to their efficiencies that are enabled by these technologies, as well as entire fields that didn't exist before computing. You add all that up, it's a stunning fact. And so my only point is that if you want today to say, why study this when we have these other problems? All I do is take you back to the cave and let's say, all right, where's the cave? There's a mountain over there in the valley, and I tell the tribe leaders, I want to explore that mountain and that valley. No, we can't afford to send you out there now. We have to solve the cave problems first, before anyone leaves the cave. We laugh at that. That's an absurd claim to make in caveman days. I don't know if anyone did it, but that's a crazy thought. Because there are solutions to your problems that might exist, and time has demonstrated likely exist, by leaving the cave that you can then discover. So for me, exploration is not just space, all the frontiers of the unknown. Biology, chemistry, AI. You know those frontiers. And then you can cross-pollinate them and transform civilization. And then the last example I give, then I'll shut up. I want to hear you talk too. It's not for me. I want to hear you interact with what I'm telling you. Here's one. You ready?
Okay.
My physics professor in college studied the universe, loved the universe, studied gas clouds between stars, and studied how would you detect a gas cloud if it's not radiating light? Well, they give off radio waves, all right? And he figured out what kind of radio waves they give off and why. And in this, he gained expertise in the nucleus of the atom. And he discovered that the nucleus can resonate. Depending on the mass of the nucleus, which means depending on what atom it is on the periodic table, it will resonate slightly differently when exposed to the same electromagnetic field. He discovered a new phenomenon in physics called nuclear magnetic resonance. It would then take a clever medical technologist to say, wait a minute, if you can distinguish one heavy atom from another, let me make a machine out of that, put your body in and I can then distinguish one kind of tissue from another. And thus was born the magnetic resonance imager, the MRI, arguably the most potent tool in the arsenal of modern medicine, where I can diagnose a condition in your body without cutting you open first. That is based on a principle of physics discovered by a physicist who had no interest in medicine. By the way, the real title should be nuclear magnetic resonance imaging, but that's the other N word. You're not so.
Nuclear, they don't like that.
Yeah, people don't like nuclear. They're less likely to go inside the machine if the word nuclear comes on. My point is, that was a cross-pollination of ideas, with clever people on their frontiers looking over the fence at discoveries that are being made. It's how we got the microwave oven. That wasn't invented by a thermodynamicist. Microwaves. This is a World War II attempt to communicate using microwaves. And they found out some guy's chocolate bar melted in the microwave field. And they said, what happened there? And they did some more tests. And of course, the water molecule and other molecules common in food respond to microwaves. It vibrates them ferociously. And so you put food in a microwave cavity, the water content of the food vibrates, friction cooks the food. There's still people today who say, oh, nuke this, because it's so fast and they like, oh, you still say it's still, have no fear, it's just friction, okay, friction it.
Yeah, but everybody's scared that it fucks up the food.
Well,
does it?
No, it just heats the water.
People get scared. The woo-woo people do.
Okay, so here's the thing. There's certain foods that don't respond well to the flipping of the water molecule. And one of them is like bread products.
It gets hard.
Yeah, it gets chewy and leathery.
Yeah.
And
but only if you like overdo it.
Yeah, if you overdo it, you got to do it just right and you're still good. If you overdo it, you can get leather. That's kind of it. I'm trying to think. You wouldn't grill a steak in a microwave. You would heat up the meat uniformly, and that's all it would do. Cooks bacon pretty fast, but it's a mess and it splatters all over. So you pick the foods that are best for that situation. As you would pick the foods best, you wouldn't put toast in an oven at 350 degrees. It's bread to make toast. We have toasters for that. Right. So different things in your kitchen do things best. You wouldn't make ice cream in your in your toaster oven.
But people are afraid of microwaves. The one thing they're afraid of.
It's not that they're afraid of microwaves. That they're afraid of things they don't understand. That's
yes.
Precisely.
Yeah. They're afraid that something's going to happen to their food that makes it less good.
Correct. And it's not the not knowing that people fear.
My wife's friend's mom will not eat something that comes out of a microwave.
Really?
She quotes that as she drinks a lot of water. She refuses to eat microwave food.
The whole life is around not using microwaves.
She won't eat anything that comes.
Happy life as such.
She has to reheat food old school.
Okay, one of the hardest things is reheating lasagna if you don't have a microwave oven.
That's true.
That's like impossible.
But you're going to cook it again.
You're going to cook it again.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
So I think microwave ovens were invented for leftover lasagna.
Yeah, just eat a bowl of pasta, just in general.
Yeah.
Soup.
Yep,
Great for soup.
Soup was good.
Yeah. So you don't have to worry about it. It's not doing anything to it. It's not sucking any nutrients out or adding any nuclear radiation.
Correct. Okay. It has nothing to do with radiation in the normal sense, other than electromagnetic radiation. It's already light from the bulb. We tend to use radiation in the context of stuff that would hurt you. So that would be radiation of high enough energy to hurt you, and microwaves are not in that category.
I never even thought about what microwaves do until this conversation.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a certain frequency of microwave that beautifully pairs with the water molecule, and it vibrates it brilliantly.
So it doesn't have to dry things?
Yeah, that's why if you put something that has no water in it, it's not really very useful.
What happens?
It's white. There's still some moisture in it, correct. Yeah. It's why it heats the food and not the plate. If the plate gets hot, it's not because the microwave oven heats the plate, it's because the microwave hit the food and the food. That's why you can usually pick it up with the handles. You can cook food on a paper plate.
That's right. This is crazy.
What? You didn't, Joe?
What is the difference between MRI and fMRI?
Oh, so an fMRI, I don't claim total expertise here, but I'll tell you the little I know. An MRI, they put you in there and you're stationary, and then they make this map of whatever part of the body you're studying, typically your head, all right? But you can do it out of your joints and other parts of your body that might require this level of three-dimensional analysis. And it's a 3D map of what's going on in the part that they surveyed. And so you look at it through slices through that section. So you might see in MRIs of your brain, of your skull, and they take slices. As the slices go through, you see like the eye socket come in and then go out again, or the nose cavity. And you can look at it in all three. So depending on the sophistication of the machine, fMRI is they are looking at your brain while you were
measuring it as they're talking to you about.
Correct. So they say, oh, think of ice cream sundae with a cherry on top. Think of a naked person who you'd want to have sex with. Okay?
And F stands for functional.
Functional, right. And so it's basically a real-time observation of what's going on in your brain.
To convict a person. There was a woman in India, and it's really a highly criticized case, but she was convicted of a crime, I believe it was murder, because she had functional knowledge of the crime scene. And the arguments against it were, like, if you're going to be accused of a crime, clearly you're going to study the evidence, you're going to talk to a lawyer, you're going to go over some things, you're going to be...
I don't know if fMRI is that precise.
Yeah, they don't think it is. That's why it was very disturbing that this was used in court. It's like, do you remember when these Italian geologists were, I think they were tried because they should have known about an earthquake before it happened, and then scientists had to say, hey guys, this is not how it works. Like, this shit can just happen.
Yeah, that's so...
You remember that?
No, I don't, but that's what I do know. Let me share a couple of things with you that I've thought deeply about recently. There are three kinds of truths in the world, okay? Because we're in like a... I'll give you three, okay?
The Rudy Giuliani. Kind?
You're welcome. Okay, so you ready?
True isn't always true.
I know, so let me try to unpack.
Okay.
Are you ready? Okay.
Alternative facts?
I do some. They call it an objective truth. An objective truth is something that is true, whether or not you believe it. And the methods and tools of science are uniquely conceived to seek out and establish objective truths. And this, I'm referring to the invocation of the scientific method. No one scientific research result is true until it is verified by other people's research results using a different experimental method with different wall current from another country. When your competitor says, I think you're wrong, let me show how you're wrong, and then you reproduce your experiment and get the same result. When you have generally the same results emerging, that is a newly discovered objective truth about the natural world. And when you have objective truths, they're not later shown to be false. That's an objective truth. Then you have personal truths. These are truths that you hold dearly. Jesus is your Savior. Muhammad is the final prophet on earth. Abraham is your... These are your personal truths. There's a heaven you're going to. No one is going to take that from you. Not in a free country where freedom of expression and speech and religion is protected. It's a personal truth. The problem here is you can't convince someone else of your personal truth without some act of persuasion, and in the limit, an act of violence. Okay?
In the limit.
In the limit. This is how you get hold of it. So I have this personal truth, and I require that you share my personal truth.
But why is
That's a recipe for disaster. Because the people who hold the belief will tell you that it's a truth. So I don't want to take that usage of the word.
Okay, so you're giving them...
I'm giving them the word truth, but modifying it to say personal truth. That's correct. I'm not going to... They use it that way for delay. I'm not going to... Okay? They feel that it is true, and it's true in their bones. I'm simply saying that because it's your personal truth, you cannot require that someone else share it. And in this country, because the United States, because God is not mentioned in the Constitution, itself a controversial thing in its day, by the way. Actually, God is mentioned, but in a very insignificant way. The Constitution is a God-free document. And because it's a God-free document, it protects your expression of religious faith. Because it means the government has no say in who and what you believe or why. If the Constitution said, mention God and Jesus, well, there it is. There's Christianity built into the fabric of the country. And if you want to be some other religion, you're going to have a hard time because we can set laws against it. This is why so many religiously persecuted people came to the United States, to escape their country where they could not practice their religion a little differently or a lot differently from what was going on in their homeland.
Is it a problem, though, to call it truth?
I would rather not call it truth, but I'm a big word guy, and I respect what happens to words. I don't always like it, but I respect it. And so I'm going to say there's an objective truth, which is true whether or not you believe it. There's your personal truth, which is true to you. Third truth is a political truth. Political truth is something that is true because it has been incessantly repeated. And then you just believe it at that point.
What?
Okay, what's Hillary Clinton's first name? It's Crooked. Her first name is actually Hillary? Okay, I thought it was Crooked Hillary. This was incessantly repeated in the Trump campaign. And that's an absurd example of it. But the point is, if you keep saying that the New York Times is fake news, you just keep saying it. Eventually people believe it. And it becomes a political truth. Because the politicians repeated it.
So it's a political truth that people believe it, or it's a political truth because people believe it? Which one is it?
So again, you're trying to preserve the true fundamental meaning of the word truth.
Yeah.
And I've just given up on that.
Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris had an infuriating and frustrating podcast where they went over the meaning of the word truth for more than an hour.
And like I said, you can do that, and philosophers like arguing and debating the meaning of things. For me, it's however people are using the word, that's the meaning. I concede that.
Well, we concede
By the way,
those
it's
things.
why I don't call myself an atheist. It's why. You can look up the dictionary definition of atheist, and it kind of applies to me, but what is the definition of atheist in practice? It is what leading atheists do, and it's their conduct. It's their behavior, it's what they say, and it's their attitude. That is what an atheist is today, because they're the most visible exemplars of that word. And most of their conduct, I either don't agree with or simply don't engage in.
What don't you agree with?
I don't debate religious people and tell them they're idiots. I don't...
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Whether or not it works, it's not in me to do that. I don't purge myself of words that have religious foundation in them. I once, in my Facebook, I had a friend going up in orbit to repair the Hubble telescope, and I said, Godspeed. And then I gave the actual name. People wrote in the thread, said, I thought you were an atheist. How can you say Godspeed? An atheist got angry with me? And I said, okay, first of all, this phrase is deeply historical in the space program. When John Glenn was launched, the headline was Godspeed, John Glenn. And every mission where we send human beings into space, somewhere there's that reference in the NASA family.
What does that word mean?
I'll tell you what it means.
Please do.
Okay? So, oh, by the way, I'll get to that in just 1 minute.
Take your time.
The atheists who are arguing that I was using Godspeed as a phrase, they all have used the phrase goodbye, haven't they? See you later, goodbye.
Right.
Where does that word come from? It's from God be with you. It's a contraction of those three words. And why would you say this? You would say this to someone leaving the city wall where it's dangerous. Okay? Back when you had city-states, you're going to your God be with you. To bring protection for you between one city wall and another. Correct.
God's look out for you.
So now, what is the source of danger if you're going to space? It's not alien space. It's the fact that you have high speed. And high speed is the source of essentially any death of anything that's in motion, if you were a part of that disaster. Equivalent to God be with you.
Is that really the
I'm
origin of it?
just saying,
But did they say that before there was space travel? Did they say Godspeed?
I don't know the actual origin of space travel, of the term. I don't know how far back it goes, but I do know it became common after John Glenn, because they're not going to say it to Yuri Gagarin because they're all atheists in the Soviet Union.
Right.
But here in America, Godspeed, John Glenn, and I respect that tradition. And so I said that, and then they jumped. So if atheists are jumping on me for having said that, clearly I'm not an atheist. And ask me my favorite Broadway musical of all time.
What's your favorite
Jesus
Broadway?
Christ Superstar. All right. So and I still use BC and AD in my writings. Okay. I still do
You
it.
don't use BCE?
I don't use BCE. All right. Oh, see, even you copping a tube right there, right? That's one of your favorites. Yeah, you see it?
Interesting. It's interesting.
No, I'll tell you why. Okay, first of all,
It doesn't make any sense.
BCE
This is
was
not current era, 2,000 years ago.
I'm going to tell you. So BCE, as you know, stands for Before Common Era,
Right.
and CE stands for Common Era. So this is de-religiousifying AD and BC.
Right.
Okay. Yet, of course, they reference the same calendar.
Right.
Okay. Well, who invented the calendar we all currently use in modern society? It's called the Gregorian calendar. It was invented by the Catholic Church, by Jesuit priests in the 1580s, assigned by Pope Gregory to fix the problems in the calendar because...
Guys, scream, get crazy.
I gotta calm down.
I'll bring you coffee.
The Julian calendar, put forth in ancient Rome, had one modification to previous calendar. It had a leap day. And, okay, leap days, how often? Every 4 years. This was good. What are we trying to track? We're trying to, the Earth goes around the sun. And so we say, all right, how long does that take? Well, it takes a year. But it turns out we're not actually tracking how long it takes Earth to go around the sun. We're tracking how long it takes Earth to repeat its seasons. And the year that corresponds to our seasons is slightly different from the year that corresponds to how long it takes to go around the sun. Slightly different. That difference was not recognized in the early calendars. And that difference accumulated. So that by the year 1584, the vernal equinox, the first day of spring, did not occur on March 21st. It occurred on March 10th. It shifted from the calendar date. That's what happens if you don't match the cycles of things. And the Pope said, we're not having any of this, especially since Easter might land on Passover, and we're trying to distinguish ourselves mightily from the Jews, so let's fix this. The Jesuit priests got to study this. They looked at the cycles of the heavens, the sun, the moon, the stars, and they came up with a new calendar, the Gregorian calendar, a modification to the Julian calendar. You know what they have to do? To revoke it, they have to take 10 days out of the calendar. To jumpstart, to put the first day of spring back on March 21st. Then this happened in October 1584. Why is there, they took 10 days out of the calendar? So now how much rent do you pay? They have to, like, invent amortized rent. Really? Yeah, because people pay for 2 weeks instead of, 20 days instead of 30. They have to figure that out. Okay? Point is, this was hard-earned, and the whole world uses this calendar. It is the most accurate calendar ever devised. Okay? Yes, I'll tell you what. Okay, you asked. So watch what happens. The leap day overcorrected the calendar. It overcorrected.
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
so you need a leap year.
So the leap day is every 4 years. That one day every 4 years was slowly putting too many days moments into the year. Okay? The Gregorian calendar figured this out. And it had put 10 extra days since the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar. 10 extra days. First, jumpstart. Get rid of the 10 days. Now everything's lined up again. Okay. Now, how do you prevent this from happening again? Because it overcorrects, how long do you have to wait to remove a leap day that you would otherwise put in? Okay? Okay. Just every 100 years. Oh. So every 100 years, that would be a leap day, you remove the leap day. Oh. Now, it turns out that undercorrects by an even smaller amount. Okay? So, how long do you have to wait before you have to put a leap day back in? Every 400 years. Oh, God. So, the year 2000 was a century year, which normally would not have a leap day, except it's a century year evenly divisible by 400, so they put the leap day back in. And everybody on almost everybody except the astronomers, on February 29th in the year 2000 said it's just a leap year because it's divisible by 4. No, it is a rare leap year. It is a century year divisible by 400. That corrects it back, so now you have a stable calendar for tens of thousands of years. I gotta give props to the Jesuit priests. I'm not gonna say, no, I'm taking the Christianity out of this reference, because they figured out the calendar that we all use, and it's a fucking awesome calendar. Sorry to drop an F-bomb there. So, I'm not, just because some atheists are telling me to rip God out of everything in the universe, I'm not doing that. I'm going to say, they came up with this calendar. The reasons were because they didn't want to confuse it with Passover. The motivation is whatever it is, but the science is good. And so there it is. So in Accessory to War, where we go back many centuries, the editors said, well, we should use BCE because it's a liberal forward thing. I said, I'm not using BCE and CE. And by the way, there was no year zero. You know why there's no year zero? Because the Romans came up with the calendar, and they counted using Roman numerals, and Roman numerals don't have a zero. Ooh. It was not yet invented. Yeah. No! So it went from 1 BC to AD 1. BC is before Christ, AD is Anno Domini in Latin, the year of our Lord. Wow. Yeah. Now, of course, in Islam and in China and in Hebrew cultures, Israel in particular, they have access to the Chinese calendar, the Muslim calendar. Muslim, of course,